So one thing that I have grown comfortable doing, but I'm not very good at, is writing user stories. And if you're going to be using any of these types of coding tools, you need to get strong at it, especially if you're non-technical. One, it'll help you figure out like what your UI and UX should be. But two, it'll actually figure out how you can develop features quickly and iterate based on customer feedback at a rapid pace, like one that's honestly, like the faster you do it, you're going to impress customers, and then that's going to help them sign on as either design partners, as paid pilots, or as actual customers. And so you want to be able to iterate really quickly, but you cannot do that in a very efficient way if you don't have like a good grasp of like what user stories should be. And so how I write mine are pretty like, use natural language processing. I just say when the user opens up, when the user clicks on this button, it opens this page. And when this page opens, an animation happens that does X, Y, and Z. So, for instance, I developed a wallet app, a digital wallet app that uses a very specific token, an ERC20 token on the Polygon network. So I needed to use Polyscan's APIs, which are free, fortunately, if you're not using it for a bunch of stuff. And in order to do that, I really wanted an animation that looked like a ticker, like when in the older days, like probably I don't know 40 years ago, when you would go to an airport or train station, you can still see it at Grand Central Station in New York, as the times of arrive, times and statuses of the trains that are coming, it'll like have like a little ticker sound, and it'll kind of flick and make this cool like animation. So I wanted to do that for an application so that every time you log in or see a page, you would actually see your number go from zero to the actual number that you have. That requires a bit of technical expertise that I don't have. And so how I was able to code it was I literally said, when the user lands on this page, they need to see how many tokens that they have of this ERC20 token on the Polygon network. You need to call the Polyscan API so that they can see the number. Then I put that in, it wrote it up for me, and then after that I said, when they land on this page, I want an animation to happen when the user sees this number that goes from 0 to however many tokens they have, along with USDC on the Polygon network, and then this ERC20 token on the Polygon network. So then it did that. And then you have to go like, okay, that animation was too fast. I need it to be a little slower. And then it'll do that. And then you say 20%. You're going back and forth, but essentially you're starting out by just saying what the user needs to experience to make this whole application works, because you're treating it almost like a junior engineer, which is kind of rough to say, because like sometimes when you work with engineers that don't have like the requisite taste, or haven't worked at companies, and you're like, hey, just build that thing that you built for this other company, build it here, you're really kind of guiding them through like what things should look and feel like. That's why you need really good UX and UI designers typically. But if you are using some type of agentic coding platform, you are basically using them as the UX and UI person, or you're the UX person, you're using them for UI and the actual engineering or building out the code. And so you want to have it so that you have a very clear insight into how exactly the user experience should be. And when it's wrong, you need to be able to say, hey, that's wrong. That's not what I intended. I need you to either roll that back, or I need you to change that to this. Sometimes, like, I can't code, but I've now learned to look at some of the naming conventions that they use in different pages, or when they're calling different functions, like in JavaScript or something like that. And now I've learned to like look at it as it's coding and be like, okay, I need to remember that the Polygon API ticker modal. That's like the call. So anytime I want them to edit that, I need to call that specifically so it doesn't change anything else. So these are the types of things that you kind of have to run through as you're trying to build these things. But it all starts with having these like really, really clear cut user stories, so that you aren't combining different prompts on top of each other, because once you do that, it's hard to roll back if the platform that you're using makes a mistake, it's a lot easier to roll it back when you're just giving them like 1 to 3 sentences, but all about the exact same thing. You don't want to like start mixing features on top of each other. Or worse yet, I see this all the time. People will actually ask it to change different things on different pages that also have to do with different features. So when it breaks something, you have no clue where it broke. You have no clue. And honestly, if you're not previewing and testing it and deploying it really regularly on Netlify or updating your schema in Supabase, like you actually won't know what happens until much later. And so usually every single change that I make, usually I try to like write it out really clearly and have an idea of an end state of where the product should be after it's done successfully. And then I'm testing it, that specific thing. So if it's that Polygon API token counter, I'm going through the preview and I'm deploying that, and I'm making sure that it works well on different browsers, on mobile, on desktop, on tablet, just for that one single feature, because you don't know where it's going to break and you don't want to go another 2 to 3 hours before you realize that it's broken, because one, it could lose the context window, which is the worst. If that's never happened to you, it's the worst, because it'll essentially forget what it did for you, and then you have to basically go through and read the code, which you can export, put into ChatGPT and say, hey, find the code block that changed this function. But it's a pain in the butt, so you don't want to do that. So it's much easier to just write the user stories, test it, write user stories, test it, write user stories, test it. And not only is it easier, you actually build faster that way. It sounds counterintuitive, but trust me on this one, it's true. So those are kind of a couple of hints and tips and tricks of how to do that for today. I'm not going to live stream today. I'll do it tomorrow, but we're going to keep coding on the app so that hopefully by next week we will start getting our first customers for it, and you can kind of see this happen in real time. We're not going to charge for it because I don't want to build in security type stuff quite yet. But hopefully this is all helpful as you start getting onto some of these platforms as a newbie, or as someone who is non-technical and hasn't really done a lot of low code, no code type of performances or applications. Like that's kind of what I want to give to you, so that you can kind of use these videos as your tent poles to come back to. Think of it like a book with chapters that you can put down, work a little bit, pick it back up, read the next chapter, things like that. So let me know if you have any questions, and see you next time.